All right, so to set the stage for some of the big questions that Nick referred to, I'm going to walk through some of the projects that AP has undergone with regards to automation and AI. You know, when we first started automating company earnings stories back in 2014, we were one of the first news organizations. There was a handful of us that were experimenting with these technologies. Today, there are news organizations all over the world. I mean, dozens and dozens of examples of newsrooms that are using automation to make story production more efficient, or algorithms to help us, surface interesting patterns in data. And so, this is really becoming more and more of a routine tool in newsrooms. So I just want to point out the use of the word augmented, which you'll hear a lot, and you heard anyone who was in the Microsoft session this morning also heard. We absolutely believe, as Nick was saying, that this technology is going to help journalists do their jobs better if executed properly, of course. It's not going to replace the work of journalists. Yeah, so just again, when we think about how we are going to use these technologies, we look for a few key criteria. Is this going to remove routine tasks from the work of journalists so that they can do more creative and high-impact work? Are these tools going to help us break news faster or find news in areas that we haven't searched before? Can it allow us to produce content that will enable us to reach new audiences or new markets? And at AP in particular, we have kind of a side benefit that not all newsrooms have, which is we have chosen as our strategy to identify startups with expertise in things like machine learning and linguistics to work with. And that brings new skills and energy into our newsroom and helps us innovate faster. Probably as we'll discuss later, other newsrooms hire data scientists in their own and build things in-house. We have pretty much chosen not to do that. So when you think about how to apply these technologies, break down what we do: news gathering, news production, and news distribution. As a large global news agency, I'm really going to focus on the first two aspects of this. And I'm going to talk first actually about the second part of the process, news production, because that's where AP started in this, and it's where we're best known. Whoops. So the fundamental problem: we are great at identifying stories and writing them, but how do we do that at scale? How many stories can one journalist write, and how many would we want them to write? So for especially routine things like sports stories or earnings stories, are there ways to scale production of those that save time? And so in 2014, this was the project that really kind of put us on the map with this. I was business editor at the time, which is how I fell into this whole world. I had editors and reporters that for 1 month every earnings season, so quarterly, pretty much all work stopped and everybody focused on producing, cramming, jamming out the earnings stories. And what I often say is my reporters and editors felt like robots doing this work quarter after quarter, and it wasn't incredibly exciting. So we looked at how can we make this a more efficient process. We worked with a data vendor, we worked with a software vendor called Automated Insights, and we wrote templates to automatically generate those stories. And as you can see on the slide, we're now automating approximately 3,700 earnings stories each quarter, most of the US stock market. I'll mention that what we were able to do, that project was viewed as so successful in terms of freeing up our journalists' time. I, as business editor, I was able to reassign reporters to cover technology, personal finance, more breaking news. I can draw a direct line between automating earnings and the number of investigative stories my business department produced. So it had real impact on the quality of journalism that AP was able to produce out of its business department. Just real quickly, sports has been a real growth area for us. The demand for sports previews and recaps because of fantasy and sports betting has only grown, and we're able to serve these needs more efficiently through text automation. This year, 2019, I should say by the end of the year, we will be producing 40,000 automatically generated stories. Now that sounds like a lot, but remember, AP, Global News Agency, we produce about 1,000 stories a day. So even though 40,000 sounds like a large number, it's still a very small number in the context of what we do. Other news outlets are doing a lot with automating election results, things like home prices, anything really that has very structured data can be automated. One of the more interesting projects that we're working on now, and I should have a slide on this, but I do not, we are working to see if AP can't use its automation skills combined with local data, state and city level data, to help local news outlets create more content that's relevant for their news audiences. Many of these smaller news organizations don't have in-house automation expertise. And so we're working on a project right now with the Newsday Media Group and Columbia University data science students testing around education data in the state of New York to see how can we work together to help local news outlets use automation to serve their audiences. And that's a project right now that we're really excited about. Another project we're really excited about, it's one thing to produce thousands of stories about, basic, home prices or earnings, but we're using natural language processing to create summaries of all AP stories. And what this summarizer does is it takes a story that was written for, your basic digital platforms as we all would write them. We write in past tense, we use quotes, we do all of the things that journalists do, and it creates a 2 to 3 line summary that's in present tense, no quotes, and is meant to be spoken. For us, this is important because those summaries go to broadcasters and radio customers, as well as Amazon Alexa and other voice devices. So there's a business case for us to use this kind of summarization, but we are really excited about it because it's kind of our first experiment with how to use natural language processing, and we think that it's the beginning of our foray into versioning. Can we use NLP to create different storytelling approaches that may serve audiences in different ways? So this is something that is a real big experiment for us, and we're really interested in how it turns out. There are other ways, of course, that newsrooms are automating production. Video transcription, which you heard about in the Microsoft session this morning, is a big example. There's a machine learning assist to it in that when you're correcting video transcripts, the machine learns from its mistakes and gets better and better. So that's another big time savings tool that we use, and many others. But I want to move, because I'm worried about my time, 2 minutes. I do want to talk about news gathering, which is just a really incredibly exciting area. So event detection, that's the fancy word for scanning the sea of social media out there and detecting what of all these posts is likely to be a newsworthy event. So we just finished a 5-week test. This tool is from a company called SAM, and we were looking to see, can this tool help us break news faster? And it did. Over the course of the 5-week test, we had 27 testers. Only 10 responded to a survey, so I've got to go crack the whip. But those 10 identified 50 instances where SAM told us about the news event before our editors knew about it. Imagine the power of being able to find out about the Aurora workplace shooting or the fire in Brazil, even 10 minutes or more, before others, before you would have otherwise. And so, how these algorithms can help us identify news happening in our communities is just a fabulous area of exploration. I don't think I have a slide on it, but I do want to mention its cousin, which is insight detection. And there are companies like Curzana, and their CEO is here in this room somewhere, and others, Cortigo out of MIT Media Lab, that are really interested in exploring how to use social listening technology to help us detect insights, particularly in underserved communities or underserved areas where, so that we're not just getting our news from the people who are the loudest on social media. And we've worked with both those companies to play around with how do our beat journalists who are covering immigration along the border or State House News in Illinois or whatever that might be, well, how can they use algorithms to see what people are talking about in their communities around these topics? So I think this whole area is really promising and a fascinating one right now. The last thing I'll talk about, I swear, Rosenthal, authentication. Now, we happen to be building a tool called AP Verify that helps us identify video that is factual and authentic. And kind of how this works. So the system will allow us to paste the URL, and it'll use machine learning to go through all of these processes that help speed the process of UGC verification. So it'll go out there and search on the internet to find, hey, has this video showed up before? Maybe it was 2 years ago, maybe it showed up as something else. That gives us a flag that this is not what it's meant to be. So I think the use of verification and that sort of thing are also really powerful uses. What else do I have here? All right. I'll leave you with this final word. Bad data, bad story. LA Times QuakeBot tweeted that there was a 6.8 earthquake in Isla Vista. It happened in 1925. And 1984 on Lifetime said, tell him not to be too hard on himself. We all make mistakes. Thank you.